Welcome to another episode of Catalyzing Radical Systemic Change, where in my own language, it's all about discovering, mapping, and cross-pollinating the various building blocks towards a planetary civilization ahead. So what do I mean with a planetary civilization? I truly mean that we as a species, for the good, the bad, and the ugly, become aware we're the dominant species on this planet. So there's a terminology very frequently used in the last year that we're entering the age of the Anthropocene, meaning we're so dominant that we're literally shaping on a very profound level, like basically everything on the mother organism, like the planet that we inhabit. And in my scenario, at least what I pray for, hope for, and will also be part of this conversation, is that we as the dominant species become aware that we're ideally the shepherds, not only of the mother organism, but all sentient beings that co-inhabit this planet with us. So today's episode is a very intimate one because it's not only truly one of my closest friends on the other side of that virtual room together in between Guatemala and where he's currently living, which is in Ireland, but it's a topic that has very profoundly shaped, influenced, and healed myself. So today's topic will cover a very specific indigenous tradition. They're in their own language called the Wixarika, and the Spaniards, when they invaded the continent, they called them the Huichol. So we will talk about plant medicine, ceremonial spaces, but we will also talk about the foundation that Angel is setting up, which is an indigenous-led foundation. So I'm almost there to introduce my guest and hand over, like always, to the pivotal moments in the biography. But I still want to mention that, which is just a plain fact, there are certain human beings which have shaped your own trajectory, meaning my own biography, on such a profound level that I can truly just say that I wouldn't be the human being, the man that I am now without Angel. So I owe him a huge amount of respect and gratitude, even though in the earlier years of our relationships, in our relationship when he was patting me on the shoulder or kicking my butt, it was certainly not always the easiest to receive those kicks in the butt. Anyhow, Angel, it's a great pleasure to share this virtual room together. You're really one of my closest friends. And like always in that podcast, we do not only cover the cognitive realms in this podcast. So would you mind introducing yourself related to the topic of today's podcast? Some profound pivotal moments in your biography that shaped you, that transformed you, and how they relate to the topic that we're covering today. Anke, the floor is yours. Super curious to listen in.
Yeah, thanks, Alistair. Likewise, definitely one of the friendships that supported me to be the person that I am today. So thanks so much for this mirror, dear Alistair, and everything that you are doing and bringing to this world. You know me, difficult to say pivotal moment. I don't know if there is a not pivotal moment in this journey. But I guess it started where most of the journey started in my childhood. You know it, I grew up as a bicultural child, half Spanish, half German, grew up in South Germany, which now 46 years ago was quite conservative and also quite right-winged. Growing up with this name and with this different cultural background, I was confronted very early with a lot of rejection, not just from society, from the school system, but even inside of my family. So my sisters and me, we were like family second class compared to my cousins. So I grew up with this anger and misunderstanding or not confirming with society why I cannot be who I am, why I am wrong just because of being. Because I thought, okay, if I'm not welcome in Germany, I at least am welcome in Spain. But there I was confronted with the same rejection. So there again, I was not Spanish. I was not part of the society. I was different and I was treated differently. So I think that is the core source why I grew up with this deep desire to change the world. Full stop. So I was like, okay, this needs to change. I don't want to feel like that. And that's just wrong. It's wrong how my parents are getting treated. It's wrong how the teachers treat my sisters in school. It's just all wrong. And this perspective, I guess, it just put me on the road of seeing society very critical. So that's how I just grew up. And somehow became very violent, addictive to substances growing up. I somehow survived my teenager years, tried to become normal, studying, becoming a German engineer, trying to fit in. It just never worked out. I just think it was just my role to be different. So after a lot of testing and trying and trying to find my place, I ended up in Berlin. And as you have also lived in Berlin, it was the first time that I somehow landed and I felt I could be who I am, as Berlin has such a diverse culture. So yeah, I tried to build a life there. And for the first time, I found passion. I found a project. I ended up in urban development, ended up in a house project, just following my instinct, building something that can bring change to the world. So 20 years ago, I was co-founding a urban co-working, co-living space, trying to build a model, a system, how we can empower one another, creating space from this crazy hamster wheel out there, and just bringing purpose into our life, but having a social impact in society. And the model and the project that we were developing became super successful. For this kind of work, it was very early pioneer. Today, everybody speaks about co-creation and community and purpose-driven, but it's like 20, 25 years ago, or something like that. So it was successful. We got the attention from the government. German government found us. Berlin Senate, the Ministry of Berlin of Urban Development discovered our project. And I started to work with the government. Working on participatory, democratic urban development and stuff like that. The project also was growing well. And on a certain point, everything collapsed in my life. And that was the point which pushed me deeply inwards. Because I always thought, if I follow my passion, if I do what my heart is calling me, if I would find success in the outside. And everyone, all the experts that I've been working at that time confirmed that what we have been doing was on a very high standard, good to roll out. Nevertheless, we failed badly. So I lost again everything. Big house project, my first startup, but I lost somehow again the belief in the world. So and again seeing what is successful in the society and what is not successful in the society. So this brought me to the point that I somehow quit with the society and started a deep inner journey. That was, I think, like 2 years before we met, or 3 years before we met. And then just seeking for answers. Why is this world working as it's working? Why is the dark side of the world constantly growing? Why seems to be that separation is the law of attraction for financial success? Why is the world just working as it's working? And that's how I went to my first spiritual retreat. I think that's when we then met. I started to work with Don Miguel Ruiz, author of the Four Agreements from the Toltec traditions. And I was really committed to the inner work, so I was super strict at that time. So a lot of meditation, a lot of yoga, a lot of clarity. And on my way to this retreat with Don Miguel Ruiz in Mexico, in Teotihuacan, I just had a little bit of extra time, and I tried to do a tourist tour, and just asking people what are nice places to visit. And going there, I somehow lost myself on the way, ended up in a canyon, near-death experience. Somehow came out of this canyon. And that was the moment when a group of around 20 to 30 people crossed my path in the middle of nowhere. Very dark skin, colorful dresses. At that time, I had no clue about the Wirarikas, the indigenous communities in Mexico, nor any interest in any kind of plant medicine or something. I was very strict on no alcohol, no consumption rule, only meditation. And they just crossed my path and looked at me. And one of the younger person came towards me and asked me what I'm doing there. What are you doing here? And then they looked at me and they said, yeah, that Hikuri is calling me. And I'm like, who the heck is Hikuri? And they looked at me and they went like, no, guy, seriously, Hikuri is calling you. And I'm like, I mean it too. Who the heck is Hikuri? And then they started to talk about, Hikuri is a medicine and it's a great spirit and he wants to talk with you and blah blah blah. And I was like, man, guys, for sure. And I'm so spiritual. I would never take any kind of substances. I only do meditation because I'm so spiritual. Yeah, nevertheless, I somehow found the way back to the village, slept the night over in a hostel, and then the next morning, 5 o'clock, I got up, took my stuff, and then I just went the path that they described that I have to go. So I walked around, I don't know, half a day, through villages, ended up in the desert of Mexico, in central Mexico. And just ended up to actually find Hikuri for myself. So the medicine that the Wirarikas are working with, and spent there the whole night and had a huge experience, and somehow survived that. Even the Wirarikas, when I tell them the story, what happened there, they look at me and like, you survived being alone in that desert. So I did. I came out, and from that I went to my first spiritual retreat, and from there everything was rolling out, and I never could point out what actually happened. It happened so much. But I knew that this moment changed my life. It just changed my life radically. But on a very subtle way. And 10 years later, I then found them again in Berlin and then started to work with them. So that was what was one of of the moments.
Hoped.
I mean, you and me are very lucky that we have not just been working with hikuri, how peyote is called in the Wirikuta language, but we were allowed to work with really great marakames, so spiritual leader, healers. And it's this combination of both. So the plant medicine does one part. So it's always three parts. It's like it's the medicine, and it's the marakami. So these three components. That's what supports your healing journey. From my first experience, which was the only time that I have taken the medicine with myself, without context, without in the context of sitting with the marakami and the sacred fire. I know that's what I believe that most plant medicines do, is I connected myself again, not just to me, but also to the planet and to the bigger picture. For the first time in my life, I could kind of found again an orientation and really find a connection. So I understood the first time who I am and what I am. And the first time in my life, I could feel the interconnectedness of everything. So I know I'm a child of this planet. I really know it. I just know that was the big gift for me. For the first time, I was not separate. I was interconnected. So I think that was the massive healing that I received through the plant medicine. And then my personal journey, working now for 10 years, it's again a combination of these three things. You know how disciplined I worked on myself, and I only take the medicine once a year. But what this medicine, with combination of the Wirarikas, did to me is also solar plexus, but for me it was more heart opening. So grounding and heart opening, and that's kind of this medicine. This medicine grows in the desert into the earth, so it's a very grounding. And also, if you see the Wirarikas, they really stand in this life. It's really difficult to shake them, and heart opening. So that was my main healing part, is the heart opening, the softening, staying strong, staying grounded, but constantly opening the heart. And then what you just said, the nerve system. So the healing process is cleaning out all these tensions that we collect over our lifetime. So on a soul level, on a physical level, on an emotional level. And that's why I keep doing the ceremony once in a year. It's like really now it's not this foundational work anymore. It's now like once a year you make a deep house cleaning, because just walking through this complex world, stuff just sticks on you. And that's actually how the Wirarikas also explain it. And once a year, it's just like a good house cleaning on all levels of my being. Yeah, don't forget the dancing. Huh? Yeah. So the way how we facilitate host these kind of ceremonies are as authentic and close to the original culture as possible, even though having experienced ceremonies with the Wirarikas in their homeland, they are still complete. They're different, but the elements are similar. And that was part of the work that I have done over the past years to also. That's why I also choose to work with this Marakame and these Wirarikas, because when they invited or asked me if I want to work with them, I was very clear that I only will work with them if they are willing to work with me. So, and you know how critical I am. Facilitation, group process facilitation, that's my core work since many years. So on a professional side, I know what a group needs to really heal in a group process. And I know our Western mindset, and their way would just be way too overwhelming for us, because they are so strong in their prayer that they don't get distracted by noises in the outside. And our mindset would just hook on the noises and forget to pray. So the art was to find a balance where we create the space, including meditation, which is no tradition from the Wirikuta. That's also part of my work, to bring in the silence, so that people really can have the space to do the inner work. So how this looks, is it always starts in the night, and then it goes until to the morning, and you sit around the fire, and then you have traditionally you have 4 rounds. You find this many times 4 rounds. In every round is somehow dedicated to a direction, to a certain quality, and in each round the marakame, and the marakame is a spiritual leader. So many would say it's a shaman, but it's a spiritual leader. It's much more than it's a shaman. He also does the medicine work, but his main job is to lead his community.
Angel, when I remember vividly the many ceremonies we shared in the last, if I recall rightly, so 8 years that I've been joining your circles, is that the setting is always around the fire, but it combines meditation, silence, it involves music and dancing. So what I would like to evoke inside of the listeners, or those that look the video, is like to get a felt, lived and felt experience of the ceremonial setting. And I'm especially interested for you to elaborate what are the parts that you're really picking from the tradition, and what are the parts that are really uniquely yours, and that shape the experience of the participants.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, it's a combination. That's what I love about the Marakame and the Vidarikas that I am allowed to work with since 10 years, is that they are so open-minded that they can adjust. So even though you work with different Viradikas, but if you go to different circles, they will feel different. Nevertheless, the core will always be the same. And the very foundational structure, it's that it starts in the night, and it ends in the morning when the sun comes out. And you have traditionally 4 rounds. So in many native traditions, you will hear this 4 rounds. It's the 4 directions. It's 4 qualities that you are inviting in. So also in this kind of ceremony, you're inviting the 4 directions. You have 4 rounds, and in each round, the Marakame shares his prayer through singing. And this is when, for me, always the energy is the highest, when he starts singing, because he communicates directly with the spirits in this tradition called Kayumari, the blue deer. And what the Marakame does, he is kind of our lawyer. So what he does during the 4 rounds, everyone can basically do whatever they want to do, but they are highly invited to do the inner work and pray with the sacred fire. And the Marakame can see this work, what everyone is individually doing. And when he sings for the whole circle, and he sings for everyone individually, and translate this individual prayer and negotiate with the spirits that the individual prayer is heard. So, and he really starts negotiating. And that's why in this work, that's where the Marakame goes into your energetic field and helps you just to really connect on a deeper level. That's why I said before, it's like always, it's three elements. It's you, it's the medicine, and it's the Marakame. So these three combined, that's what makes the experience. And then there's traditional dancing and the rest of the night between the songs of the Marakame. And this is what I love about this ceremony. This kind of work, it's very open. It's very social. That's why I love when children are in the ceremony. That's why I love when animals are in the ceremony. It's just like life itself. And the beauty of this medicine compared to others, and I don't have a lot of other experience, but from the bit that I have and what I have heard, it's that many other plant medicines or other kind of medicines, they take you on a journey. And obviously there's always individual work and different path, but mostly you go on a journey. Hikuri doesn't do that. Hikuri is a very observative medicine. He works very gentle. So you have to actively work, and then the medicine can help you to go deeper. So if you are in the process of healing ancestral lines, if you are in the process to heal emotionals, and you are willing to go into that space, the medicine just will help you to go deeper. And one way how you do that is in silence, obviously, if you want to do that. But in the tradition, and that's what I have learned from all my teachers in the different native tradition, it's really about the prayer. So it's actually not so much about the medicine. Many people always believe it's always about, but the Virarikas and all the traditions that I'm working, they all speak about the prayer and the sacred fire. So this is actually the core medicine. Your prayer with the fire, and the medicine and the Marakame, they just help you to go deeper into your prayer. And then you have traditional dancing, and we share music, traditional music, but also whatever kind of music everyone wants to share. You can share your prayers out and loud. You can just speak to the fire, and this can make a ceremony also very wild and very alive. Yeah. And that's what I love about this ceremony, because it's a very social event, and it can become actually very wild. And through that, you got all the mirrors from your daily life that trigger you in your daily life. Yeah. And this is what helped me so much in my healing, because I'm coming from Vipassana and meditation and Ashtanga. Yeah. So I really can sit there for 10 hours in silence, not moving, and just being this perfect meditator. And in this ceremony, it's impossible to control. Yeah. I'm allowed to make the fire, and I will. That was such a big medicine the Virarikas gave me. I tried to make this perfect fire. Yeah. And then just one of them in front of my eyes, I just finished to set up the beautiful fire, sitting down, being proud of my beautiful fire. And then one of the Mirarikas just walked by, and with his foot, he just kicked the fire so that the fire collapsed and completely broke. Yeah. And the whole perfect structure was gone. And that's the medicine that helped me so much. So that it's really not about controlling. It's not about perfect. It's not about being beautiful. It's like really staying connected with your prayer, no matter what in the outside happens, and keep doing your work, and let everybody else do whatever they do. And I think that's the biggest medicine that I received from the Virarikas. In these ceremonies, you really see a lot of processes, and some processes look really wild. And these two guys with whom I'm working now since 10 years, they never changed their facial expression. They never judged even one person. And some really tried to challenge them, yeah. They stay with their prayer, they stay with their heart, they stay with their commitment for healing no matter what. Yeah.
I feel like I want to close that chapter on the ceremonial space.
Mhm.
I just want to mention the aspects that I think shaped my soul's trajectory on a very profound level, because the communal aspect, and like you say, that not like in many other plant medicine ceremonies, you're basically on a cannonball or whatever, maybe the metaphor, like balls dripping. Um, but that you're jointly around the fire. So you're truly witnessing both your own process as well as the processes of the others, as well as the fact that in case people are truly speaking to the fire out loud, you're also witnessing on a very profound level their own prayers and healing journeys and wishes for their life, which I find very interesting. So this like collective prayer element. And the other thing that I feel like I just want to underline from my own experience is that the specific medicine, like the peyote, the cactus, or in their language, the hikori, is kind of almost the opposite, like tripping. So it's like kind of really weird when people say it's a psychedelic, because it's not like whatever mushrooms or LSD or ayahuasca that you feel like you're tripping. You just feel like actually very serene, clear, grounded, focused. You just feel like enlivened and strengthened. At least I would say in the normal ceremonial dosages. You know, I had my own very, very high dose experiences, but in that specific context, I always felt like is really just supporting your way by the effects of the medicine. Angel, um, first of all, I don't know if congratulations, but I admire your perseverance in supporting the Wixarika, so uncompromising and setting up this foundation. Before we dive into the work of the foundation and why did you set it up and what makes this foundation unique, can you give some texture around?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks. That's for me the important part. So ceremonies is like a service, more to our culture, and obviously also supporting to create income and bringing healing to this world. But the true medicine and why I'm doing what I'm doing, it's really because of the Wirarikas, of their culture, like, and their heritage and their work that they are doing, which is such an honor. So the Wirarikas are one of the rare indigenous communities, just indigenous lines, who have still maintained, I would say, around 90% of their original culture. So you see them still walking with the same shoes like the first Wirarikas walked with. So it's a very old lineage. And what makes them, for me personally, so trustworthy, because it took me years to understand the aspect of lineage in healing and spiritual paths. And their lineage is one of very little ones existing who have never actively been involved in any kind of war. So their whole ancestral wisdom, so what they pass from generation to generation to generation, is exclusively knowledge around healing, personal healing, community healing, and healing the planet. So that's it. That's all they have been singing about, praying about. It's only healing. And this is very rare because most indigenous communities have been involved in any kind of wars. And obviously they have their difficulties. I also don't want to romanticize them. They have internal conflicts. There is violence. But their heritage is like pure lineage of healing. And the honor in working with them is that they dedicate their life for world peace and world balance. At least the Marakame and the spiritual leaders, like the two ones that I am allowed to work with, their life is a dedication to bring balance, healing, and light to the world. And therefore, they have to do every year a pilgrimage where they go to sacred places around Mexico. And now it's easier because they can travel with bus, but it's still like it's challenging. These pilgrimages is like really difficult. So they have kind of 5 places where they do they pilgrimage every year, and they bring offerings to each of these places every year. And while they're doing this pilgrimage and bringing the offerings, the Marakames receive from Kayumari, and Kayumari, they say Kayumari is the first being who came out of the water to walk on the land. And then he walked and walked and walked and ended up in the sacred land, which is called Wirikuta. And then he saw the people suffering, and then he sacrificed himself, became Hikuri, so the peyote, so that people had something to eat, and became access to him, and with that spiritual access to receive guidance for their community. So they walk every year this places of pilgrimage to receive instructions from Kayumari, what they have to do during the rest of the year to keep the world in balance and in the light, so that the world doesn't fall into darkness. So their whole year is like really dedicated once a year, and this pilgrimage, depending, it's in 10 to 20 days with 10 days of fasting preparation. So it's a whole month so that they can receive the instructions what they have to do during the whole year. And this Marakame that we are working, he received in one of these pilgrimages the instruction that he has to come to Europe to bring this medicine and to bring this prayer, not the medicine, to show us how to pray, where you come together like in the pilgrimage once a year as a family, you go into the fire, you heal yourself, you be with the family, and there you receive the instructions, what you have to do the rest of the year so that you and your family is in balance. Yeah. And that's also one of the projections to them, is they also only take once a year medicine in their tradition. The rest of the year they're only praying, and they're only doing what they receive from their instructions to keep balance in this world. So they live a very dedicated life to bring healing to our world.
There's a model that you want to test and prove, because it's not only the Wixarika, there are also other indigenous traditions, and it's so important that we as Westerners connect ourselves with this like ancient old wisdom. So I really want to first speak about the why before we talk about the how and the what.
Yeah. So yeah, I was lucky that indigenous communities crossed my path very early when I started to find solutions to bring change, impact into the society. The Aborigines from Australia, and the Arawakos, and the Mayas, and so on. So they always crossed my path. I just decided to really go deep into the cultural encounter with the Wirarikas. So yeah, but yeah, and I actually never asked myself why I'm doing that. I was just asked last week, I think it was, in an interview, why I'm doing this work and why I do it, why I think that it's important. I'm like, oh, it's actually a good question. Why should we do that? And the question for me is very clear. Indigenous communities, if they could survive and if they could keep their original culture, which again, I have visited many villages. It's not easy to find pure indigenous communities who are not eaten by our economic system. They still carry a core what makes us human. So the way they live, it's like a mirror for our culture. And the biggest medicine for me being with the Virarikas was this unconditional acceptance of each and every one. There was no codependency, and obviously it's a community, so there are families, and they care for each other. But each and every one is unconditionally accepted as he or she is, embedded in the community. I've never experienced this in my whole life. So if we want to understand what unconditional love is, they are living it. Like really, they are living it. How you live in harmony within the community and in nature. They are still living it. And that's where we all are coming from. And this is, again, if you then have to take the medicine to feel and understand it on a deeper level, that's what plant medicine shows you. They show you who you are, what you are as a human, how you are connected to this planet. And indigenous culture do that, exactly that. So this is such an important mirror, especially now at times when we are running in this crazy AI whatever world. I think if we would lose them, it would be like losing the trees on our planet. It's like a core that they are keeping for us to remember what it means to be human.
What are the specific elements and why did you choose them? When you set up the foundation, there's some core pillars, how you are setting up the
Mm.
foundation to impact their lives on the ground, preserve their culture. So what are these elements and what's the broader theory of change? Why did you choose those pillars for setting up the foundation?
Mm. Yeah, this sounds already as if I would have chosen it. The whole approach of this, and to be specific, in this first step, we have set up a non-profit association within the core constitution, steward ownership principles to grow into a foundation, steward ownership foundation. So it's just regarding to the resources, setting up a foundation is so much more expensive. And it's like, as you said, it's like a trial and error now. It's like really, that's like a test. So most of the people that work with indigenous community, I don't think, yeah, I don't know. They see it very critical in this radical approach, and that we are doing. And again, it was not my decision. So the now director, the co-initiator, with whom I'm working now since 10 years in the context of ceremony. But as I said, when they asked me if I want to work with them, I told them that I'm not just here to do the ceremony work, because that's not my path. My path is to build systems to bring societal transformation. So that was always my quest, and they accepted that quest, even they really didn't understand me at the beginning. So it took years. They started to understand how a German engineer thinks about systems and building system and influencing systems. So it was just so far away of their awareness. Um, and that's why it took us 8 years of praying at the fire and asking Kayumari, the Great Spirit, if we are allowed to set up such a foundational work and how. And then 2 years ago, the Marakame received the confirmation from Kayumari that now it's the time to set it up. And that we are allowed to co-create it now. And then just one thing followed the next, and it was just very natural how we created it. When I'm now looking at it, I'm like, okay, that is a very smart plan, but it was not me. I think it was more through me. So having said that, so what we are doing is, this is the first nonprofit steward-owned indigenous-led association in Mexico. And so it's owned by the Wirarikas for the Wirarikas. And in the cornerstone of the Constitution, it's decided that if the association should be closed, all the resources go directly to the community. So there is no ownership, no personal ownership. And it's for the Wirarikas, from the Wirarikas, which means I'm currently still a temporary board member, so that I really can control, especially the finance part, because that's one of the shadows of general Mexico, but indigenous community corruption. It's also in the Wirarika system. So yeah. So I need to have a look on that, but they asked me for it. It was not that I came with it. They asked me for it. They want my German engineer clarity in the system and as a support for themselves, because they know themselves. So they know their struggles and they know that they don't come from nothing. This already shows the awareness of the founders. So we have now 3 founders, 1 woman, 2 men. And we are focused now in 3 areas. And that was just by listening 10 years. What are the problems? What problems do you have? And then it was clear that there are 3 categories of solutions they need. The one is preserving their culture. That's a real problem. So on the one side, their sacred land, which is in central Mexico, is in danger by mining companies from Canada and so on, taking out all the minerals, and just not just killing the land and the sacred medicine, but also cutting access to their pilgrimage places. So then they cannot follow on their duty and keep the prayer, and that's the most important part. So that they can have access to the sacred places. So that is at risk, and the second risk, and there is that also the Virarikas are suffering under economic pressure, and through climate change it has increased, because so far they could feed themselves through planting their own food, but now because of the climate change they have not enough water. They lost 50% of their livestock last year, and the food that they can grow by themselves is just not enough anymore to survive. So younger people and people in our age, they have to leave their villages and work in cities, and the children are left behind in the villages with the elders. So the villages are basically very empty during the whole year, and the whole family only comes together once or twice a year, which is very difficult for the elders because they have to take care of everything. But also it kills the living culture inside of the villages. And people are just moving to the cities and with that losing their access to the ancestral wisdom. And the elders like the Marakame that I'm allowed to work with, who still have access to the ancestral wisdom, are also getting less and less and less because this is a very difficult and challenging lifestyle. And through the media influence, everybody wants just the Instagram, Facebook lifestyle, and nobody wants to keep doing the hard work. So this influence is also there. So the knowledge is getting lost, the wisdom is getting lost, intergeneration storytelling is getting lost, and the sacred land is getting lost. So we need to preserve the culture. That's one area. A second area is to create a sustainable infrastructure, like water access. There are villages where the women, because men mostly try to find work, and women taking care of the children if they still live in the villages, they have to walk 4 to 6 hours to get access to water. And sometimes this water access doesn't work and they have to walk a complete day to get access to water. And as I said, food is difficult to grow and livestock is dying. But other areas of the communities, they have problems with energy, light, access. Streets can be very difficult, so they need infrastructure. And the third area, they need solutions, or they want solutions, are building their own local economic solutions. So that they can start creating income inside their villages so that they don't have to leave their villages and they can nurture their community life again. So these are the three areas. And just looking at it, these are the three areas that basically all indigenous community needs. So it's always these three pillars. They need infrastructure, they need cultural support, and they need local economy. So, and that's why we are building this blueprint, not just for the Virarikas. It was from the very beginning with a clear intention to build a model that we then can share with other indigenous communities. Because that's, again, what I love so much about the Virarikas that I'm working with. They are so open and they understand they need to connect with their brothers and sisters around the world so that they can keep the indigenous heritage all over the world, not just in Mexico, not just from the Virarikas. And with this foundation, we want to contribute to that.
So I've been thinking about how to build the boundary conditions for that podcast. And I know it's not your biggest strength, but if instead of a prayer, the people who made it to the very end, like, what would be your wish for yourself and for your work with the Wirarika when it comes to the ceremonial work and when it comes to the foundation? So maybe you speak out a couple of wishes or how people can contribute, how they can get access to you and connect with you and really help with their resources, their network, with their money.
So first of all, if you do the medicine work, please do it in the traditional way with the Virarikas. So there are three enemies of the Virarika culture. One are international NGOs. So they kicked them all out of their villages because mostly they followed their own agenda, took a lot out of their culture and didn't give really something back. So that's why the Vidarikas kicked them all out. Secondly, mining companies who are destroying their sacred lands. And thirdly, are as they say, hippies, but I would say spiritual seekers who consume their medicine and going to the sacred places and just taking the medicine without taking care that it's growing back and without the traditional context. So if you hear this and if you want to do this work, please do it in relation with the Wirikuta so that you really get the benefits of it and that you do it in a way that respects the tradition and takes care of the medicine. So that's one of the things. And then relating to the work that we are doing as a foundation, I'm just inviting everyone. Of course, resources are very welcome. That's a big project. And more than resources, it's like we are looking for partners who are in the line of that work, who have experience with solar panels, who have experience with water projects, who have experience with storytelling. And one of the things we want to do is, or what we have started, is that we are interviewing all the elders who are dying out so that we preserve the knowledge. And how can we create books of it or animation movies for children to make this wisdom alive. Expertise in that would be very helpful. And yeah, and every support we can get to spread the word, finding ambassadors. Yeah, and I think it's really about spreading the word, getting aware that these cultures still exist. And I believe it would be a massive gift for us as humankind if we could keep them alive, for all of us.
So I don't know if my checkout is more of a prayer, but I want to underline that if you feel called to get to know or deepen your path in the ceremonial space, please do it honoring the boundaries of the respective indigenous traditions. Become aware if the setup from the organizers is really contributing to the indigenous and not an extractive business model, and for many a very lucrative one. I think that's a signpost. And the other one is, if it's now, because that's part of the podcast, but if you have ever profited and healed, or you could integrate something inside of yourself through the wisdom of indigenous traditions, please give back. Please really just give some of your money, even small sums are welcome. Obviously, in this context, if you have worked with the sacred peyote, give back to the Wixarikas. We will provide the links in the show notes. But even if you work for other indigenous traditions, just please become aware, for all the healing, that you've received, and just give something back. For you specifically, Angel, I just wanted to, towards the very end of the podcast, really just, express my deep gratitude for sharing this intercontinental, very deep friendship. Super grateful for the podcast. I think there were many, pearls of wisdom, many deep takeaways for many listeners. And with that, I'm checked out and just wanted to say thanks for making this possible, Anke. Thanks for the conversation today.
Thanks, my dear.